Hey guys, I'm Chris Buck and a very warm welcome to Friday Fretworks. To be honest, this last week has been a little bit manic with various things. Preparation for the tour first and foremost. Plug, all the links are down in the description box if you want to come and see myself and my band Bucket Evans live in the UK. Recording, filming, rehearsals, just a load of stuff going on that kind of made me realise I wasn't going to have the time that I would like to sit down and dedicate to filming a proper Friday Fretworks. So it occurred to me earlier in the week that the one thing that I haven't really done but I get a lot of requests for is a Q&A video. So I opened up my Instagram stories on Tuesday of this week, I think, to see if you guys had any burning questions for me, and amazingly had over 500 responses. So if I tried to answer them all individually, I would be an eternity. So what I've done is written them all down, which took a while, and tried to whittle them down to kind of 20 odd common themes or common questions. And I'm going to try and answer those today. If I don't answer your question specifically, please do let me know in the comments, and I'll definitely try and get around to it on the next episode of the Q&A section. As I said, this is the first ever one, so forgive me if it's a little bit clunky, but we're going to see how we get on. So let's take it away. Practice routine. Honestly, I wish I had one. I guess part and parcel of being a professional musician, whatever the hell that is just playing guitar an immense amount. You know, most of my day is spent with a guitar in my hands, whether it's filming, whether it's recording, whether it's rehearsing, writing, you know, tabbing, or not necessarily tabbing stuff out, but kind of making sure I know stuff well for gigs I have coming up. Just an immense amount of my day is spent with a guitar in my hand. So I guess that, you know, inherently becomes your practice routine, is just playing all the time. However, there are holes in my knowledge, little kind of gaps that I would like to plug, which would undoubtedly require a practice routine, a more formal, more scheduled, you know, kind of just rigid approach to it, I guess. And that's undoubtedly my goal for the next year. I talked about this with Justin. A lot of it, to be honest, is finding the inclination and finding the time. And if you spend most of your day with a guitar in your hands or editing videos of yourself playing guitar, the last thing you really want to do at the end of the day is go and pick it up and try and formally learn something. But it's laziness primarily. So my next year is going to be spent trying to plug some holes in my knowledge and just, you know, try and make myself a more rounded, better player. If I go back in time, the one gig would undoubtedly be Guns N' Roses live at the Ritz. I think it was in 1988. And in hindsight, I guess, knowing Guns N' Roses history like I do, was their first big introduction to the world. It was broadcast live on MTV. And I guess from a band perspective, it couldn't have picked the worst show to broadcast. It was chaotic to the max. It was out of tune, Axl throwing a microphone around, Slash falling in the crowd, just things going wrong, left, right and centre, stage invasions. But watching this as a teenager was just mesmeric. Honestly, everything about that gig, as I said, was just chaos. And, you know, really kind of set them up as this sort of the most dangerous band in the world, as they were dubbed. And honestly, watching that gig and the sort of just madness surrounding it, you can really see why they gained that reputation. It's everything to being a rock and roll band. It's amazing. Man, always feeling like I'm stuck in a rut to some extent. So if I had a bulletproof or a concrete answer to that question, I probably wouldn't be getting stuck in the rut in the first place. But if I was to try and proffer any advice, I guess, on how to get out of it, honestly, just expose yourself to different genres of music. You know, delve into an album that you may not think you would like, or a different style, or a different band that you've kind of been avoiding. Honestly, there's something to be gleaned from everything, even if it's just stuff that you know you would like to avoid in future. You know, you will expose yourself to different ideas, different melodies, different chord progressions, anything that might spark an idea or spark a new bit of inspiration. Honestly, it's very easy to get burned out. I am all the time playing guitar as much as I do, especially when so much of my job involves listening back to stuff that I've played. It's very easy to get burned out on your own playing, a little bit depressed that you were going around in circles on occasion. And honestly, my only way I've found thus far to try and remove myself from that is to take a backward step, throw myself into something else, and just try and find new inspiration. First ever pedal was a Digitech Screaming Blues that my parents bought for me at Music Live in Birmingham, probably in about 2004, 2005. Honestly, very vague memories of that pedal. I do still have it. I don't still use it. But my only kind of memories of that pedal really are plugging it into the front of my PV Rage 15 watt amp and making it sound more ragey, I guess, more angry, more like a bee in a can. So I'll have to dig that pedal out and see if it was as interesting as I remember. Biggest inspiration, we've mentioned him already, would be Slash. Not so much even for the guitar playing, which I absolutely idolise. You know, everything about My formative years was spent trying to replicate everything that he did, down to the way he dressed, his hairstyle, everything about it was just the epitome of cool. But having grown up and watched, him kind of just remove himself from the struggles he's been through over the years, I guess, and how he's come out the other end of it as an incredibly humble, very sweet, very softly spoken, generous, loving guy, is just amazing. I think that's a good mantra to kind of go through this industry with. They say never meet heroes. Everyone who I've met that I've admired, been fortunate enough to have a very good experience with. Slash in particular, having got to know him, just always quick to respond to text messages or emails, check in on me, see how I'm doing, wish me luck for gigs. Just a lovely guy who I'm very lucky to know. Favourite notes? Honestly, never given it much kind of thought, I guess, but if I lean on any, it would be the first, third and the fifth, which makes sense really, as they are the harmonies which make up a chord. But major and minor thirds are a big one, really kind of just accenting. It's all about, outlining what you're trying to play. And if you can get to the point where you can really outline the chords that you're playing over without actually playing those chords underneath, but people can still tell what you're jamming over, that's the ultimate aim. I'm not there yet, but I'm hoping to get there. And it's all about really accenting those first, thirds and fifths and just making sure that people know what you're playing over. Honestly, struggled with this for years, and the only way I found around that kind of muddy neck pickup and ice pick bridge pickup is a good set of humbuckers. Specifically for me, a good set of PAF replica pickups. PAFs, delving into that 59 Les Paul world in the past couple of years has been a real education in regard to what Les Pauls are meant to sound like. Balanced. And I've always struggled with that mud on the neck pickup. Any level of gain, you flick over the neck pickup and it's just that all-consuming low end and mid-range that just makes everything a little bit indistinct. In a good set of PAFs, you've got clarity, you've got definition, just everything that you would want in a good set of humbuckers. So I guess change of pickups is the obvious answer. And if you're looking for something specifically, check out a good set of PAF replicas. Grey Emperor, I spoke about this guitar at length in the video I did about it. Honestly, just a phenomenally made instrument. Tom is just an incredible craftsman, full stop, really. Great attention to detail, just everything about that guitar works perfectly and just plays beautifully. I love having the trem floating on it to do that kind of fluttery sort of Jeff Beck thing. The only other Strat I have, or Strat type guitar, I should say, that plays anywhere near as nicely as that is the Gordon Smith guitar. Both, again, just made by incredible craftsmen who are very good at what they do. Definitely check out both of them. Gauge strings, I would say, do have a noticeable effect on tone. I think thicker strings generally sound a little bit darker, but honestly, the most discernible difference for me is that when you use thicker strings, you dig in a little bit more, and that inherently becomes a little bit more toneful. I think a big part of Stevie Ray's sound was not that he had massive strings on there, but he just played so bloody hard, and I think that really has a massive effect, especially with Strats. Single coils in particular really respond well to you digging in and just giving it a little bit more, giving it the beans, as my old man would say. Desert Island setup. One guitar, one amp, one pedal. One guitar, undoubtedly going to be a Telecaster. I'm a Strat guy through and through, but I think Tellies are probably the most versatile guitar out there, and they do everything very well. One amp would have to be something that would be clean. It does beautiful cleans, but can kind of dirty up, because I'm going to not choose a dirt pedal. So I would say the V40, as opposed to the V40, because assuming I got to this desert island on a little boat or a raft, I would have undoubtedly sunk under the weight of the transformer in the V140. So I'm going to say V40, as it's a little bit lighter, and pedal would be probably the Adorna Prince Booner. Not an overdrive pedal, as I'm kind of known for using many of, but as I said, if I can get a little bit of gain out of the amp, that would keep me happy. And that pedal, the Booner, has just inspired a lot of different ideas, a lot of different chord progressions, different melodies. It's such an inspiring pedal that you can get lost in for days. It's a beautiful bit of work. Challenges of being a musician in the 21st century. Honestly, this is a question that deserves its own video. So I'm not going to get into that too deeply now, because this definitely requires a whole episode of Friday Fretworks, I would say. So stay tuned. One thing I wish I'd learned sooner. Honestly, it would be not thinking in a box mode or a scale mode, I guess. Mode is probably a bad word to use. Kind of thought process. All of the notes are all over the neck. You don't have to find them in boxes. And a big way of getting out of that kind of method of thinking is to try and just replicate stuff on one string. Run up and down the neck, learn those scales, learn those modes, but do it on one string. And it sounds a little bit mental, but you'll just learn where notes are relative to one another, and that's definitely something I wish I delved into a lot sooner. The Silver Sky. Honestly, I've played two. I love the concept. I can see why it polarised people. I think John Mayer is a fairly polarising character, as are PRS guitars, to be honest. I've never known any guitar company, with the exception of Gibson, I guess, in the past couple of years, get as much hate or get as much grief from people as PRS. So I can see why the collaboration between the two, especially when it's so similar to a Strat, really irked, shall we say, a lot of people. But in regard to my opinion on actually playing them, I struggle a little bit with the 7 1/4 radius, which is bizarre actually, because I've got a couple of Telecasters with that radius neck and I've never struggled with those. So I don't know what it is about that specific guitar which really hasn't quite clicked for me yet. But again, as I said, I've played two of these for about 15 minutes tops, I guess. So I've not really had any chance to sort of get used to them in any great measure. And the other thing I definitely struggled with was just how much high end there is in them. I think I've got so used to my pickups and my Highway 1 and the Grey and the Gordon Smith Strats. I'm not sure whether it's the capacitors, I want to say. Whatever it is in the tone and volume pots, I think are of a higher resistance or lower. I don't know. I'm not a spec guy. But there's so much high end in that guitar that I just struggle to tame it a little bit. And high end is not something that I kind of aim for in my tone. So yeah, I struggled a little bit, but honestly, the concept I love. Who's ever played a bad PRS? They're all amazing. We've all played dodgy Strats down the years. So the idea of combining the two, I think, is a great idea. So if you don't like it, you don't like it. There's no need to go on forums or Facebook threads and bash the hell out of it. Just, it's not for you, it's not for you. Set my actions on Strats as high as I can get away with, but without being uncomfortable. I guess this comes back to the idea of digging in earlier with thicker strings. Love to be able to dig in. I don't phone it in then, ultimately, I guess. I don't go through the motions ever. If they are sufficiently difficult to make you really kind of dig in, it's going to get more out of you playing. At least for me personally, I can only speak from personal experience, more out of you playing and a more rewarding experience. Advice on overcoming low motivation. Honestly, it would be to step away from the guitar, which seems a little bit counterproductive, I guess. But I think it was Joe Perry, I read a quote by years ago, who said he'll go through fairly big periods of time where you will not touch a guitar, and then the whole point being is that when you do come back to playing it, you have a renewed sense of enthusiasm and invigoration for something that you do ultimately love. And it's easy to get a little bit bogged down, myself especially, as I said earlier, when I play as much as I do, filming, recording, a massive amount of that time is spent listening back to myself as well. It can get a little bit depressing, I guess, and feeling like you're going around in circles, which is going to be linked to low motivation in some respect. So if you're not finding it, if it's not working, if it's not grooving for you, step away from it and come back in maybe a week or two and see if that's really giving you a new sense of purpose. Currently listening to a lot of audiobooks, to be honest, which probably isn't the most musical of answers, but the new Joey Landreth record that came out the other day. I've not had a chance to give it a real kind of going over yet, but there's some real cool tracks on that. The new Maren Morris record as well. I covered Girl obviously recently. There's some great tracks on that album. But honestly, I've been in a little bit of a musical or new music rut, I guess, recently. So if you've got anything that you think I would like, definitely suggest it in the comments box, please. What brand gauge of strings? I use Ernie Ball. I'm lucky enough to be endorsed by Ernie Ball. On my Strats, invariably, I use 10 to 46, 11 to whatever they would be if we're touring heavily. On my Les Pauls and Rev Styles, actually, I've been using the new Burley Slinkies, I do believe they're called, which I think are a hybrid between 11s and 12s. They feel particularly good, especially wrapping them over on the Les Paul, which, irrespective of what the internet says, does make them feel slinkier to play. But more often than not, 10 to 46, which I think are the regular Slinkies. Speaker in the Zilla cab is a EV12L, get my model number right, which happens to be my favourite speaker. Love that speaker. Love that cab, in fact. Great sounding thing. CLAPTON Strats, you're going to have to stay tuned on this one. I'm going to do a dedicated Friday Fretworks. Recently acquired one, which has an interesting story. So I'm going to do a video talking about it. Just got to get it in ship shape prior to that, so stay tuned. 59 Les Paul or 54 Strat. I would say 59 Strat. 59 Strat, 59 Les Paul. Tend to struggle a little bit with the V-shaped necks on those early Strats, although not as much as you might think. But if nothing else, even if I don't like the 59 Les Paul, I could sell it and buy several houses. No real formal education. I had a couple of lessons in school from a guy called Greg Hunt, who was a brilliant teacher in the sense that he really just inspired me and, just gave me this massive sense of enthusiasm for the guitar. It wasn't maybe the most kind of formal education, he wasn't teaching me the dots as such, but he would go out of his way to teach me the stuff that I wanted to learn, which when you're 13 or 14 is what you want to do. You don't want to be learning the tracks from the grade book. You want to be learning Offspring or Blink-182 or whatever it is you're listening to at that particular point in time. I had lessons a little bit later on with a guy down the road called Chris Fry. Lovely guitar player, undoubtedly probably the most versatile guitar player I've ever come across. An incredible guitar player, plays in a prog band called Magenta and does some beautiful flamenco style stuff as well. So as much as I did have lessons, none of it really formal. Chris would try and get me on the whole kind of finger picking thing, which was not happening. So yeah, it's all been fairly kind of relaxed, I guess. Man, that's a good question. Honestly, there's no sort of firm answer in this, I guess. A guitar, first and foremost, is meant to inspire you, and it doesn't matter whether that's a Squier Bullet Strat that you found in a charity shop or it's a $3,500 custom shop. It really doesn't matter. You'll get good guitars wherever you look. In regard to whether it's better to buy a better guitar then, or just upgrade the one you have, again, is entirely dependent on you. If you love the guitar or love the way a guitar feels and plays, but you're not maybe sold on its sound, maybe experiment with some different pickups. But if you feel like, investing in a better instrument is going to draw more out of your playing, go for it. I'm not saying that in any kind of derogatory sense, but if you think that maybe buying a custom shop because it's what you've always wanted and you think that will, make you kind of dedicate more time to it and get better, go for it. There's really no right or wrong answer in this, but I would say if you have a guitar that you like the feel of, but not really sold on the sound, definitely check out upgrading the pickups and the electronics. That's a great question, and honestly I don't really know the answer to that. I guess YouTube and by extension of that Instagram are an incredible platform for new players, and there are a lot of people who I would have never heard of if it wasn't for stumbling across them on Instagram or on YouTube. My concern, or not concern, I'm not worried about it, would be that you're learning in a very isolated manner, and so much of my musical education was getting in a room with other guys, jamming and really just, getting amongst it ultimately. And if you spend all of your time playing with backing tracks or with a loop pedal, you develop a sense of time that is very relative to you, and so much of that can be a little bit off on occasion. So until you're faced with a drummer who's giving you grief for speeding up or slowing down, you're not really going to know what your sense of time is like. So as much as it is an incredible platform, I would definitely recommend getting out there, checking out jam nights, getting in a band, just doing all the stuff that you're meant to be doing when you play an instrument. It's very much a shared experience. And lastly, definitely most importantly, who's going to finish fourth? Heart says Arsenal, Head undoubtedly says Chelsea. I think Arsenal have blown it now with Wolves and Palace. And I think United are probably not in the greatest shape to go after it at the minute. So I'm going to say Chelsea. But we've always got the Europa League, which I've no doubt we'll probably be knocked out of next week. So let's see how it goes. I despair. Either way, it doesn't matter. And I will be as miserable at this point in the Premier League next year as I am now. So who cares? Me, obviously. Thank you very much for watching. As I said, this is the first Q&A I've ever done, so apologies if it was a little bit clunky, but it's going to be a semi-regular thing at the very least, so do let me know if you have any questions you would like me to answer. I'm Chris Buck, this has been Friday Fretworks, and I shall see you next week for another episode. Cheers guys, take care.